Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Superheroes, Movies, and Superhero Movies. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
Today we're going to talk about Fantastic Four from 2005, starring Johan Griffith, Jessica Alba, Chris Evans, Michael Chiklis, Julian McMahon, written by Mark Frost and Michael France, and directed by Tim Story. Now, typically we open up our podcast with a look back, talk about the first time we saw the movie. But unfortunately, I don't really have much of a memory. I know I saw this in the theater, but it didn't have much of an impact on me, I gotta say. And yet, I've always kind of known... Well, let me back up a little bit. I never read any Fantastic Four comics as a kid. But there was a cartoon show in the 90s that I must have watched. I don't really have much memory watching it. But I've always kind of known who the Fantastic Four are. So, unfortunately, there's not going to be much of a nostalgic part of this episode, at least on my part. But
no, you're right, because I don't have any either. I actually didn't even see it in theater.
Yeah, so there you go.
I think I saw it like years after it was released.
Okay. You had seen it before you watched it for this episode?
Yes, just once.
Okay. I had seen it a couple times. I know I watched it when it came out on DVD, and I know I saw it in the theater. And I was actually looking forward to it. Like I said, I kind of considered myself a Fantastic Four fan, but I don't know why. I didn't really read the comics, and I really have no recollection of watching the TV show. But I do remember when I was in middle school, I will say, there was a... And you might know about this, John, but there was a Fantastic Four movie that was made.
Yeah.
Roger Corman produced it. Yeah, and it never saw the light of day, really. I remember reading the news. I think it was in Wizard magazine or something like that. But I remember reading the news that they were making that movie. And I remember being excited about it back then, but then it just never came out. I actually did find, a long time ago, I don't think I still have it, but I got it off eBay. It was like a copy of a copy of a copy of that movie, and so I have actually seen it now, and it's pretty terrible. The one good thing I think I remember thinking or the one thing I thought they did okay in that version was Dr. Doom looked pretty cool, and I thought Dr. Doom actually looked cool in this movie too. He's got like the right look. He had the hooded, coat, and the mask was just straight out of the comics. Mm-hmm. So I guess that being said, we'll just dive right into this film. I liked it when I first saw it back in 2005, but I also tend to like every superhero movie that comes out the first time I see it.
Yeah, it leans definitely in that direction. It's rare that I see a superhero movie, and don't like it more, at least as much as the average movie.
Right.
I'm rarely disappointed in a superhero movie.
Right, which, you'd think a lot of, based on internet hate, you'd think there'd be a lot of comic book fans and, fanboys, for lack of a better term, who don't like very many comic book movies because they don't like the way that or superhero movies because of the way they're portrayed.
Most of them are very well received.
Right. And I have to say, even the bad ones I still kind of have a soft spot for. And I would consider this one not bad, but maybe kind of middle of the road, kind of mediocre. Mm-hmm. It's not as good, obviously, as the Dark Knight trilogy or Spider-Man 2. But it's also not as bad as the first Ghost Rider, or I would even consider Daredevil probably, lower than this one.
I've actually never seen the first Ghost Rider movie. I take it back. I have not seen any Ghost Rider. Or I guess there's two. I haven't seen
two
either
of them now.
Yeah.
You'll see both of them eventually for this here podcast. So I guess we'll get right into it. What do you think of the performances? What do you think of the cast, the main cast, the Fantastic Four?
I love the cast. I love everyone. I think each one of them does well. Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, Ben Grimm. I liked him. Now, the guy that played Ben Grimm, what's his name?
Michael Chiklis.
Now, he's from The Shield?
That's correct.
Okay, I've never watched that show.
Me neither.
He was probably my least favorite out of the cast. I felt like, he had the look going for him.
Mm-hmm.
The voice was pretty good, especially when he was as the Thing.
Right.
And that's another thing that I really loved was the Thing's suit.
Mm-hmm.
I love how they didn't do CGI.
Right.
It's a guy in a suit, and the suit looks pretty good to me.
I agree.
It could look, and of course this movie came out in 2004? 5? Yeah. So it looks believable. It's a little bit I'm trying to think of the word to describe it. Not plasticky, but if you really, really get critical about it, it doesn't necessarily look like stone, but it does. If they today, I think they'd put a little bit more work into it, but it still passes even today. I thought it looked fine and much better than a CGI thing.
That's what I was going to say. Talking about they might put more work into it today. I don't know if they would. I don't know if they would go the
right.
suit route.
I think
they would do it CGI like the Hulk and the Avengers.
Exactly. I mean, if they chose to do a suit, I think that there would be even more detail to it. But yeah, no, right. I think you're right. I think with this new Fantastic Four movie reboot, they're probably going to do CGI.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's what they're going to do.
Especially with the guy they cast. I can't remember who he is, but he's pretty small and skinny.
It's Jamie Bell, who, he's not Michael Chiklis' size. Although I don't know how tall Michael Chiklis is, but yeah, Jamie Bell's pretty skinny, so you don't think of the Thing when you look at Jamie Bell. So I imagine it's going to be a motion capture CGI thing. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if they make him taller too. Like his version of the Thing might grow a foot or two,
right?
Kind of tower above the other three.
How are you feeling about the reboot?
I really have other than the fact that they cast a pretty young cast.
Yes, it's extremely young. I can't believe. It's pretty insane.
The kid that's playing Reed Richards, Miles Teller, is a great actor. I've seen him in a few things, and he's really good. But he's just young, so that's my main concern. I think Michael B. Jordan is also a really good actor, so I'm excited to see him as Johnny Storm. But other than that, I really don't have much of an opinion on it yet because I haven't. They've kept it under pretty tight under wraps.
Right? Have they even started filming yet?
They're finished filming it.
What?
So yeah, they were. I think they were shooting it during Comic-Con. They were wrapping it up around Comic-Con time. So everybody was really surprised that they weren't at Comic-Con at all. They didn't bring any footage or anything. So, but yeah, I know it's wrapped. So, and it comes out in August, so I'm hoping we'll see a trailer here eventually, a teaser or something at least. But yeah, I can't really say until I see something. I mean, there hasn't even been like an official image released or anything.
Yeah,
it's pretty secretive.
Nothing's been released.
So until I see something, I can't. It's tough for me to say. I don't really have any hate for it, but I also don't have any love for it either because aside from the cast, they pick good actors, but. I hope it's good.
Yeah, of course. Speaking of Skinny Thing or Ben Grimm, there was a show I used to watch Cartoon Network a lot.
Right.
When I was middle school. And that would have been about the mid-90s, and that was when Cartoon Network, in my opinion, was at its prime. Mm-hmm. It was probably right before the Dexter era. And they had Hanna-Barbera licenses, like out the wazoo.
Right.
So that was pretty much all they played. They played a show called The Thing. I don't know if you've ever seen this. Have you ever seen it?
Doesn't sound familiar.
And it was based on... I think it was Ben Grimm, but it was The Thing. Mm-hmm. And he had a ring that would instead of, him being stone all the time, he put on
go back and forth.
Yeah, he'd put on this ring and he'd say, "Thing ring, do your thing," and then he'd turn into the thing. But that
weird.
Yeah, there was no Fantastic Four. It was just based on Ben, and but that Ben, if it was Ben, was very skinny and kind of just lanky and not someone that you'd think was this gigantic rock.
Right.
I don't remember if he ever used the term "it's clobbering time." But there was also, in the 60s or 70s, a Fantastic Four cartoon that they played on there as well.
From the 60s and 70s?
It was from somewhere around that time era, yeah.
Okay.
And I watched that a few times too. I had figures from the Marvel series out in the early 90s. I had all of them, Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman. Right. The hard ones to find were Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman. They were near impossible. I mean,
really?
These are the ones that if you found one, you found gold. And especially Invisible Woman, she was insane to find. But
because she was invisible.
Nice. Yeah, she wasn't though. I mean,
was she clear? Or
no,
they
came out with one later that was clear.
That was clear.
But no, this one was a little bit of an older version, and no, she's just a girl in a Fantastic Four suit. So yeah, I had a few comics too. I was a fan of Fantastic Four. I did like them a lot, and knew about their powers. I didn't really know too much about their villains except for Doctor Doom,
right?
Which I would assume most people are in that situation, especially non-comic book fans, if they even know who Doctor Doom is to begin with. So that being said, I was excited for this movie, and I remember I was kind of confused watching it at first, because it definitely had a different vibe. It was way more lighthearted. But about halfway through my first viewing, I was like, okay, I'm going to watch this differently. I'm not going to watch it like I'm watching Spider-Man. I'm going to watch it lightheartedly. And I found myself really enjoying the movie.
Right.
This time, it was a little harder to do, but I still enjoyed it for the most part. Right.
I could even argue that Spider-Man, the first one especially, has kind of a lighthearted tone to it.
Well, now, yeah, I mean, now that they've changed, but, we have to remember, too, I mean, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, these were the first superhero movies. You had the Batman.
That's true.
Ones,
Spider-Man 1 was what, 2002?
Yeah.
And it was Spider-Man and X-Men in 2000 really kind of did start the whole superhero craze. So this was only 3 years later. That's very true.
There hadn't been a standard.
It was before The Dark Knight came out, so not everybody was trying to do a dark, gritty version of whatever. And I definitely see, I mean, this movie has a PG-13 rating, but I definitely see that they're... I wouldn't be surprised if the 20th Century Fox kind of studio people saw it as a kid's movie.
Yep.
Because that's how it feels, for sure. I'm going to have to, just to go back to what you said, I'm going to have to look up that Hanna-Barbera Thing cartoon. It sounds like they were trying to do like an Incredible Hulk version of the Thing.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe they wanted to even do like an Incredible Hulk cartoon, but couldn't, or something. It's very interesting.
Yeah, he had this ring. It was weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, I liked the show as a kid.
Well, right. I'll look it up. This movie, I liked it. Like you said, when it first came out, and I saw it in the theater. I enjoyed it. I thought the performances were all pretty good. The person that I didn't really care for that much, but I also don't think it's necessarily her fault, is Jessica Alba as Sue Storm. I didn't really see her as Sue Storm. This is me being kind of a nitpicky fanboy, I guess. Sue Storm.
I know what you're saying because I agree with you, but
she didn't do. I mean, she didn't do a bad job, but also I don't really feel like. I feel like she didn't have a whole lot to do. For example, here's one of my notes. The scene where they're on the bridge, right? And the Thing is depressed because his wife, that's a whole other note I have. But the Thing is depressed and then he causes this big traffic pileup.
Right.
Reed Richards and Johnny Storm are like, Sue, you're the only one that can get past this crowd. You got to strip down and get naked and go invisible so you can walk by everybody. And so she does it.
Yeah.
And then Johnny and Reed
just
meet her
right.
on the other side.
Right.
They get through without a problem.
Yep.
But she has to go invisible to do it.
Right.
It's like they needed her to how can we use her invisibility? But they just didn't know what they were doing or something. That's something I didn't really think about the first time I watched it, but watching it this time I was a little more critical.
Yeah.
And they have no problem getting through the crowd, but they made her strip down and go invisible for it.
Not to mention something that bugged me, and these are the little nitpicky things, and I'm assuming it's added for the kids. Just a little silliness here and there, but she's going through the crowd, invisible, bumping people and saying, "Coming through."
Right.
I'm like, well, okay, there goes your discreetness.
Yeah, you don't quite get this whole invisibility thing yet. So there's some problems, I think, but that all comes down to, I think, more of the writing and the story.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the beginning of the movie. I like how Reed and Ben are they've always been friends, but I like how they're looking for money to fund research, and so they go to presumably what I assume is their last resort, which is Victor Von Doom. And
yeah, I think they alluded to that.
Yeah. I do like how Reed is dressed in a suit and Ben is just wearing regular clothes to this business meeting.
I didn't even pick up on that.
But I guess that's his character, sort of. You know, it's one of those things. Victor Von Doom agrees to give him the money, and I like how they're all in space together when the whole.
Did we do a spoiler warning?
No, but we can't.
Yes.
We're going to talk about the whole movie, so if you haven't seen Fantastic Four, be warned. Spoilers will be talked about, so go watch Fantastic Four and then come back and listen to the podcast.
I was going to, the reason I brought that up is I was going to mention that what they were getting funding for was a cloud in space that Reed has a theory was that hit the Earth and helped boost evolution, basically. And he wants to be able to go up there and study it to see if we can further ourselves as mankind. And that's important because of what happens when the cloud touches them.
Right. Which is what happens. They get up there and they think the cloud is I can't remember, a few days away or something like that, and it ends up being mere minutes away.
Yeah, I don't know what the timing was, but yeah, it came much sooner than they were anticipating.
And so, they try to abort the mission. Victor has placed himself in a room that has shields, while everyone else was outside of that room, and Ben was actually in space when it happened. He was
trying to, what was he doing?
He was fixing something or, setting something up or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was doing, but he was out there in his spacesuit and tried to get back in time, but the cloud hit him personally, which I thought was a nice little touch because he's the only one really whose physical appearance is altered, aside from Victor. So that was kind of cool. I like that. That it's different than how Doctor Doom's origin in the comics is. I did some research on it.
Yeah, doesn't he? It's a suit in the comics, right?
The
metal.
What? The mask and
the
everything?
metal.
I think so. The
only reason I think he puts on that suit in the comics is because of the scar on his face.
It could be. It's the research I did was like a week ago when I watched the movie, and it's basically like he one of his parents was like a sorcerer, so he kind of has like he's like a half sorcerer kind of, and he does come. He's born in I think it's is it Latveria? Is that where he's from? It says it at the end of the movie. Anyway, he's born there, but he comes to the U.S. eventually, and he's Reed Richards' like college roommate. And then he builds a machine, and I wish I could remember what it was, but he builds some sort of machine that is obviously dangerous, and he's going to use it somehow. And it's Ben Grimm actually who sabotages the machine, and the machine like blows up in Victor's face, and that's how maybe that's how he gets his scar or something, but that's how he also gets his powers.
Okay.
Because he's like half sorcerer, half superpowered. I don't know.
Interesting.
So he didn't go up into space with the Fantastic Four in the comics. That's the main point. So I thought they did a pretty good job of kind of working around that. Because I think the comic storyline of him being college roommates and then him building some death machine or something would have been a little cheesy.
Right.
So I actually think the way they did it in the movie actually works pretty well.
Now, who plays Von Doom?
His name is Julian McMahon. He's known primarily for he was on that show Nip Tuck.
Okay. I liked him pretty well. But at the beginning of the movie, I thought he was laying on a little thick. Not necessarily his fault, because I think that the writing could use some work.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this when they're closing the shields and he's trying to protect himself and Sue, and she's like, "You can't just leave him out there." Talking about Ben being out there in space, and he's like, "Watch me." Mm-hmm. I'm like, I understand you're trying to create a villain,
right?
But you just
too much.
You just proposed to her, and you're going to act like this,
and now he's going to. Now you're going to kill her friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little. I thought he did pretty well with the role that he was given. My main thing that I don't like about Dr. Doom in this movie, I think he's great for 90% of the movie, but once he puts that mask on, suddenly there's just, and maybe it's just the way that I've kind of always heard Dr. Doom in my brain, reading the comics and everything. His voice just doesn't match, in my opinion.
I know what you're saying.
He has this really kind of, not high-pitched, but like, just kind of this type of voice.
Right.
And when he's got the Dr. Doom mask on, it just doesn't really work.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. They should have done some sort of Darth Vader type, maybe not necessarily have another actor do the lines, but they should have done something to have it be bigger, deeper, a little bit more bass to it or something.
See, I disagree.
Really?
Yeah, I liked it. To me, it left him feeling more human. Like, I feel like, and I know what you're saying, and like deepening the voice, I feel like that would just be a little bit too cliche to do. Mm-hmm. I liked that they kept him, the same guy. It left some humanity in him. I really liked his personality as Dr. Doom. Silly stuff, yes, but the Marco Polo joke with Invisible Woman.
Right.
I liked just the way his voice sounded and the way he just delivered those lines.
Well, it's always bothered me, but I guess I see your point, and maybe it would have been cliche, and maybe I would have hated it if they had done it. But it's just like I said, I liked his voice when he's not in the mask, but there's something about once he's in the mask, it just doesn't work for me. Mm-hmm. The voice just doesn't. It's
and
like
I wonder if we've been
different.
I wonder if we've been trained to think like that.
Could be
like with Darth Vader, like you said. Because I know exactly what you're saying. Yes, a deep voice would you would immediately think to give him a deeper voice. So I don't know, but yeah, I was cool with it. I like the scar idea, and they used it in this. In the pictures that I saw of Doctor Doom before he put on the mask in the comics, his scar is a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets worse in the movie as time goes on. I kind of wish they had just left it, but yeah, from what I understand, he was just so basically egotistical with himself and being handsome that when he got a little imperfection, he had to put a mask on to conceal everything. And I think that's a pretty cool characteristic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like I was asking, was it a suit in the comics, or did his body turn to metal like it did in this?
No, I believe it. Well, I know it's a mask.
Right.
I don't think that his body turns to metal, but I could be wrong. I don't know. The part that I was reading was just about his origin, so I don't really recall.
Gotcha.
His body turning to metal, but I could be wrong. That was another thing that was a little weird about the movie to me. I don't know where he gets the mask from in the comics, but in this movie, it was like a trophy given to him by the people of Latveria, and
what a trophy, huh? I mean,
really,
doesn't make much sense.
Yeah. So that was another kind of piece of bad writing, in my opinion. They were like, I don't know how to get it this mask. Oh, it'll be a trophy from whatever.
Yeah,
it's just kind of weird to me. Chris Evans as Johnny Storm, I thought did a great job. He kind of captures the
grows
cockiness.
On me the more I watch it. Not that I didn't like him before, but I started really enjoying his performance.
Yeah. I think he's I think he's fun. The movie is a little cheesy in parts. After the space fiasco, they're in quarantine, and he wants to go snowboarding,
right?
Because they're out. I don't know where they are, but he's like, let's go snowboarding. And then that's when he first kind of learns of his powers, which, by the way, that was another note I wrote. He flies off of a really tall cliff where any normal human being would probably die once they hit the ground. And he's only saved because he can fly.
Right. Well, he also has super strength.
Does he really?
To a degree. I mean, I would think so. I'm pretty sure
was that displayed in this movie?
I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure he could be thrown into a concrete building and get up from it. Is what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, nonetheless, I mean, a normal person probably would have died going off that cliff.
Yes.
And yet, the nurse woman that he's with skis down to him in a matter of seconds.
Good
She's
point.
like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, did she know of some secret pathway off to the right that he didn't see or something?
And then
so that was a little weird.
Then he offers her to get in with him.
Yeah, care to join me?
And she does.
Right. Nothing weird about that.
Right. Yeah, but his heat had created a little spa pool thing from the snow.
Right.
He's just sitting in there.
Very convenient.
Yeah.
So there's cheesy moments like that throughout the whole movie. One of my other problems, I guess, with the film is there's a lot of sitting around and waiting going on in this. Once they leave quarantine, they go to the Baxter Building, which is straight out of the comics. It's the building that Reed Richards owns, I believe. It's where it's like the Fantastic Four headquarters, basically. And so in the film, Reed is trying to figure out how to reverse what has happened to them. And so I would say a good chunk of the movie, they're just kind of sitting around in Reed's house, essentially, trying to wait for Reed to come up with... I mean, there's some montages of him doing some work, and they cut to Victor Von Doom kind of figuring some stuff out. And Johnny does leave occasionally to cause trouble or go to dirt biking events.
Right.
So that was... It's like there's just... Up until the end, they don't... I mean, I know it's the point of the movie, I guess, is them kind of embracing being different and embracing their new powers and things like that. But it's just... there was a lot of sitting around and waiting. Well, there wasn't a whole lot of action, I guess, in the middle half of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. The only the real action that they give us is when they they first are revealed to the public on the bridge scene.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's you're right. There's nothing really until Doctor Doom at that point.
Yeah. And the bridge scene, I liked the thing in the bridge scene, and the scene where the fire truck is kind of falling off the edge and Reed saves him. I liked all that. I'm curious to see how Reed Richards' powers in the new film are going to look, because in this movie they don't look that great.
Mm-hmm.
It's very obviously, I mean, it has to be CGI, but it looks, and I think that's one of the things that makes his character difficult to translate to the big screen, is because since he can stretch and has essentially like a rubbery body, it looks very cartoony.
Yeah.
But that's almost his power. It's like his power is almost being able to be a cartoon character.
I mean, if he were a real person, would he look cartoony in real life too?
Right, exactly.
And that's, kind of sucks that you can't distinguish between that, because if that's the case, we'll never get a Mr. Fantastic that will be like, hey, he looks real. Because
right, exactly.
He does, but we don't know it.
Right. So that's a question I have. But I like how on the bridge scene, after they've kind of saved the day and the news trucks are all there and they're like in this tent, somebody has conveniently set up a TV.
Yes, I wrote that down too.
Or whatever.
And it's not on. They're like, let's just
the
put
TV's
the TV
not on?
here. We're not, because he walks up to it. He's like, haven't you been watching? And he walks over and turns on the TV. So they just have a TV sitting there, not even on.
Right.
Waiting for
not
the
even
moment.
using it. But it happens to be on the right channel and everything, I'm good. Maybe it's a feed. Maybe it's a feed from the news truck. But still, it's a good thing somebody put that TV there so that that guy could walk over and hit the button.
Right.
And so then they learn their team name, the Fantastic Four, from the news. So
another thing that is part of that scene and beforehand, which causes it, the reason Ben Grimm is depressed, I cannot stand this. He has supposedly been dating this girl. I don't remember her name. For a long time. They show pictures of them. Like,
her name is Debbie.
Is it Debbie?
Yes.
That doesn't ring a bell, but okay.
She's played by Laurie Holden, who is from The Walking Dead.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, they show pictures of, them being together, and you can tell that they have a really good relationship. I mean, they're engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And he shows up at her place, calling her from a payphone, which was kind of odd that they had a payphone. Even though it was 2005, I think even in 2005, payphones were getting rid of them. But
they still have them from here and there, I think, don't they?
I haven't seen a payphone in years.
Oh, well.
Years. Anyway, so he tells her, hey, I got to show you something. She comes down in her lingerie, by the way.
Right.
And is mortified.
Yeah, instantly. Well, I mean, it would be a shock for sure.
Yes, but her reaction is to run away, screams, "Don't touch me!"
Yeah,
and runs off. Then you hear someone say, "I'm going to call the police." So he runs off and goes to the bridge. Well, after the saving happens on the bridge, she comes bumping through the crowd to the front, stares at him like, "How could you?" and shakes her head, takes the ring off her finger, and puts it on the street.
Yeah.
What?
No, I have a big problem with that too. I don't like the fact that we never hear about Debbie throughout the whole first part of the movie. It's not until after he becomes the Thing that we even know she exists.
No, that's not true. Actually, Sue, she doesn't say who she is, but she asks how Debbie is doing in the scene where they're asking Von Doom for money.
Oh, okay. Well,
but I didn't pick up that until second viewing. So
okay. I didn't pick that up this time around either. So my whole point is wrong, but still, it's like he doesn't call her from, like the quarantine place before he turns into the Thing. he has like a dinner with Sue and Reed and everything, and there's no conversation, or at least that we see, with Debbie until he goes to the payphone. It's like her whole point of being in the movie is to essentially dump Ben so that he's depressed about his state.
But it's so unbelievable.
Yeah, I know, I agree.
I mean, I understand he looks like a rock, but if you guys had that close of a relationship...
And you knew... I'm assuming Debbie knows who Reed is, and knows how smart Reed is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would have faith that Reed could be able to figure out how to reverse it, which he technically does. He just doesn't have the power to do it.
Right.
He doesn't have enough power.
Yeah, it's just... I just could not believe that she just turned her back on him. And then
especially that second scene on the bridge.
Yes.
Where she, like, it's just
terrible.
shaking her head at him. Yeah.
And then after that, he's all depressed about it. I get that, but I'm assuming he wants her back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, that girl is worthless. She's not worth it.
Right. And I know, later on they introduce Alicia, who played by Kerry Washington.
Right.
And I'm almost positive Alicia's in the comics. So it's like, I think that was maybe another reason they introduced Debbie and had Debbie leave him, was so that they could introduce Alicia. But honestly, you could introduce Alicia even without Debbie.
Yeah.
I mean, he gets stared at and all this stuff when he's the Thing anyway. It really doesn't take, he could be depressed about it without having to be dumped by the worst human being in the world.
Yeah. I agree with that statement.
So, yeah, that was bad. That was real bad.
Oh, I was going to say, I do like, in that scene, though, they did do something good that really, touched me, was when she puts down the ring and he walks over to it. I mean, his world is crumbling. And he walks over to pick up the ring, and he can't. Yeah. Because his fingers are so big. And that just rubs salt in the wound right there.
Right.
He's just facing, I can't even pick up a stupid object.
Yeah.
That is how, well, in his mind, useless he is at this point.
Right.
He has a lot of uses that he hasn't really thought of at this point. But his emotions have to be just destroyed.
Absolutely.
So.
And then, to top it off, once they go back to the Baxter building after that, Johnny keeps messing around with him, calling him wide load, and
which I liked a lot.
Yeah. And I think that's also kind of true to the comics as well. I think Johnny and Ben kind of have a loving, bickering relationship.
I loved the way you thought you were going to get the reveal of the Thing when he's in the hospital bed and the mirror.
Yeah, that was good.
I loved that. You're like, because it's a slow turning of the mirror, and you're like, oh, he's going to be the Thing, and he's normal.
And it's just normal.
Unfortunately, the doctors couldn't do anything to fix your face.
That was pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. Another thing of bad writing that I had down was when Reed and Sue were eating, and they had yet to discover their powers. In fact, they were going to in this scene, when she turns invisible on accident. And he stretches out his arm to catch the wine bottle that's falling. But they're talking about their relationship, or their past relationship, and lack thereof of the current. And you can tell Sue is still has feelings for Reed, which he is oblivious to.
Yeah.
But she's like, look at me. And he looks at her as she's turning invisible. And it's fine, for the reveal, because, that's the moment that he sees her. And he's like, oh my gosh, she's invisible. But his line is, I can't.
Yeah.
But he's looking at her. And then her response is, what do you mean you can't? Look at me. And I'm like, why would she say that? Because he's looking right at you.
Yeah.
He's looking at you. You can see that. So why would you respond? She was so angry. She was like, look at me.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you just got to think about what you're directing and the lines.
Yeah.
No reason for her to say, look at me again, if he's looking at her.
Right. I agree with you. And there's probably a dozen or so instances like that throughout this whole movie that we could probably kind of point out. I think, the more we talk about it, I feel like the less I kind of like this movie.
It was a fun movie for what it was, especially when it came out. Like I said, This was one of the first ones. There was really no foundation at this time for what these movies were supposed to be.
And it was the first time, and so far it's been the only other, aside from the sequel, but it was the same with the same cast. It's the first time we've seen a live-action Fantastic Four, because that one that they made in the 90s was never released.
Right.
So unless you're like me and you got some horrible copy of it off eBay, this was the first time that you were seeing these characters finally kind of come to life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there was kind of there was a fun little magic to it, but now that the time has gone on and we can let that let that settle, we can look for it as to what it really is, and it's an okay movie. It's a kids movie, I would show it to a younger audience and they'd probably really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely not. It's not in the Thor, and not that Thor isn't for kids, because I think Thor is a fine movie for kids too.
Yeah,
but Thor is not geared towards kids. I wouldn't necessarily say this was geared towards kids, but more towards families.
Okay.
And I think now they're not geared towards families, they're geared towards fans.
Right. I would agree with that statement. I do like how they were given these suits to wear in space, and I like the explanation that because they were wearing those suits when the accident occurred, the suits then kind of, kind of did some sort of...
There's some molecular manipulation in the suit as well.
Yeah. So, invisible. Sue's suit can go invisible. Johnny's suit is not flammable. Reed's suit stretches. So I liked that. And I don't know if that's how it was in the comics or not, or if it was just they wore costumes. They never explained it.
Right.
But I liked that was the explanation in this film. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, I heard it, and I agree with you. I liked it too. Part of me, was like, that's kind of cheesy, but it also makes sense.
Yeah.
They each got different powers, so I would assume that the time they were hit with the cloud, would change how they were affected, or maybe different parts of the cloud affected, them differently.
Right.
And the fact that they were there, their suits were on them at the time, that's why it got that ability.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about how the research for the cloud was, he thought that a similar cloud was what kind of kickstarted evolution. Is that what you were like? It's interesting that because they came in contact with that cloud, I wonder if technically, let's say in the Marvel universe, I wonder if the Fantastic Four, at least in this film, kind of would be considered mutants.
Mutants.
Yeah, because the whole idea behind X-Men and mutants is they're
evolved.
The next step of evolution.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so, because I'm pretty sure that's what they're going for with this, that their structure, their, genes and everything changed and evolved quickly because of it.
Right. So if that's the case, I don't know if it would, necessarily matter where they were when they got hit with the cloud, or like what time they got hit with the cloud or whatever. I think it's just boosting their genes or whatever to the next evolutionary step, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, I think they obviously have to be able to wear costumes. She can't strip down and be naked every time she wants to go invisible. So I liked the whole idea behind it.
Yeah.
I don't know who put the 4 on it. Because I remember in the movie when Johnny's at the dirt bike, whatever you want to call it, kind of extreme sports place. He takes off his like racing suit to reveal his Fantastic Four suit underneath, and it has the Four logo on it. And Sue's watching it on TV, and she's like, "What did he do to his costume?" And it cuts to Reed, and he like opens his lab coat, and you see the Four on there, and he like quickly hides it. So it makes me wonder if it was actually Reed.
Reed, yeah, I think it was.
Yeah,
I think the whole purpose of that movement was like he's like, I'm not going to show her mine because I did it. Yeah, that's funny. Did you notice there's a scene where Johnny is sitting down to watch TV and he's got popcorn?
Yes. I like that. I thought that was a pretty cool little effect they did where he's cooking it as he's walking.
Yes, I didn't pick up on that until this time.
Yeah. That'd be a nice little...
That was pretty cool. Yeah, he's just walking to the living room, popping the popcorn with his hand.
Yeah.
It was very subtle.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I like that. That was cool. One of the moments, it's real stupid, but one of the moments that I like, and it's because of Chris Evans' acting, is during a montage while they're all sitting around waiting at the Baxter Building. But he put shaving cream in the Thing's hand, and he's trying to tickle his face, you know? And he uses the feather duster side at first, and it doesn't do anything because he's rock and he doesn't feel it. So then the next time he uses like the handle of the feather duster, and when he finally smacks himself in the face with the shaving cream, Chris Evans' reaction is so great, where he like throws his arms up in the air and then runs out of the room. That actually makes me laugh like every time. Like it's a stupid prank, but his reaction is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, he plays the character very over the top, and I think it worked well.
Yeah, I do too.
His confidence in himself is just beaming.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I liked the line he had with when the nurse was taking his temperature. "Oh, you're hot. Oh, thanks. So are you."
Yeah.
And then when they're going down the snowboarding, she's like, "You're on fire." He's like, "Thanks, you're not bad yourself."
So let's jump ahead now, I guess, towards the end of the film. Dr. Doom. By the way, here's a question I have: how did Dr. Doom? Do we see a scene of him installing cameras in the Baxter Building, or does he just have cameras in the Baxter Building?
I don't remember him installing them.
Yeah, so he just checks in on Reed from time to time, like he's got cameras in that building and he always has or something? Because there's definitely a scene of him watching Reed, like, do, calculations on the
Oh, no, yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I was trying to think maybe it had something to do with the fact that he invested in them, but I don't think there was enough time.
Yeah, I wonder if it was a deleted scene or something that got cut out. By the way, I have on the DVD, I watched the theatrical version, but I do have an extended version. So it'd be interesting to watch that to see if they kind of answer one or two of these questions. I've never watched it, the extended version. I've also heard it doesn't have completed special effects in it. Ooh. So that could be also a little weird.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's watching Reed, and that's how he finds out that Reed has successfully figured out the formula, or whatever you want to call it, the equation to reverse their powers. But he doesn't have enough power to power the machine. And so that's when Dr. Doom comes in. And the whole reason he's willing to help is to get Ben out of the way, I believe, right?
Yep.
So he powers the machine, reverses
It's kind of like the opposite of the Avengers, really. Like Loki wants the monster. Dr. Doom is trying to get rid of the monster.
Right. And so once Ben's out of the way, he can finally attack. Because I guess his whole motivation is he's upset about what happened in space, and so he wants his revenge against Reed primarily, but I guess also against... And I think he's also mad that Sue went back with Reed, right?
Yes. And that's part of Von Doom's fault, because he's using that to kind of twist a thorn in Ben's side.
Right.
He kind of brainwashes him a little bit, saying, just...
Yeah, he's taking his time trying to figure out how to reverse the
Right.
You know,
He spent, like, yeah, you think he's your friend. He's not working on this thing. He's out eating with Sue right now.
right.
And then they walk in laughing, and he's sitting there. Yeah.
Which Ben believes that. I mean, Ben, I guess maybe he's in a vulnerable state. But Ben believes that a little too quickly for my taste. Like, Reed and Ben have been friends for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I think even Ben knows that Sue is the right woman for Reed.
Yeah.
So he really shouldn't be upset that they're kind of together again, sort of. But I understand that he does want to be normal again, quote-unquote normal. And so I could see that he could be a little upset. And I know Dr. Doom is obviously just getting into his head. But I do feel like he believes it a little too quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it just takes a sitting down at a diner.
Right. Stack of pancakes.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it takes.
So, like I said, I as far as the end goes, when they actually battle Doctor Doom, I was pretty pleased with Doctor Doom. You know, I liked the voice. I thought he looked great. The way they, you know, the hood, the mask.
Yeah.
It was Doctor Doom on the screen for me, and I was very pleased with that.
Right. Yeah, I think I agree. Aside from the voice,
Mm-hmm.
And that's just because, like I said, I really think, you know, when Spider-Man came out in 2002, I started buying comics again.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the lines of comics that I was buying was Fantastic Four. So I did, you know, I was reading some comics before this movie came out that had Doctor Doom in it and everything. And I just heard him a certain way in my brain, I guess.
Yeah.
So when the movie came out, I thought he looked just like Doctor Doom. I thought it was awesome. But then when he spoke, it just didn't work for me. So, But I say, aside from the voice, I think, he's perfect as Doctor Doom on screen.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate that it's been a while since I've seen the sequel, and I know he is in the sequel. But, you know, it's just, it takes the whole movie for him to become Doctor Doom, and then he's defeated pretty quickly. It's one of those, I feel like superhero movies have that problem occasionally. You know, if you think about Iron Man 2, they kind of defeat the villain pretty quickly in that film. This film, they defeat him pretty quickly. So, I mean, it kind of happens from time to time in superhero movies. They do a lot of setup to, like, a big battle, and then the battle is over pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. I didn't mind it too much in this. I didn't think of that, but it does play into the fact that you're right, when they're just sitting around waiting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That they could have filled in some of that with something.
Right.
Related.
And I understand it's an origin story, but yeah, it's just the middle part of the movie, I would say, is a little boring-ish because of how they're just not doing anything.
Yeah.
One of the ways that Doctor Doom plans to get rid of Johnny Storm is to use a heat-seeking missile, which I think is pretty smart in this case. You know,
yeah. I loved that shot too when he fires it out the window. It just looked good. I liked that.
Do heat-seeking missiles, do they like really turn that? You know, do they really follow the heat like that much? Because in this movie, he's flying in between buildings. You know, he's going from he does 90-degree turns, and the missile doesn't miss a beat. You know, it's following him the whole way.
Yeah, I doubt it would be that accurate.
Right, that's what I'm thinking.
I think it's probably, pretty accurate.
I'd be curious to find out.
Yeah, they probably tweaked it a little bit.
But I did like how, even though it didn't work, I thought it was pretty smart of Johnny to kind of throw a fireball up into the sky and then stop his powers so that he starts to fall, and he sees the missile go by him. And then he has to kind of flame on again in order to not die. And then the missile comes back. I thought that was actually pretty good. I like that part. Like some of the moments in this movie are pretty good.
Yeah, no, they are. And I think most of the best moments are in the last battle.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Well, that's because we're actually seeing them use their powers.
Right.
Being, heroic and stuff. And there's also a little bit of a, science lesson, I suppose. I don't know how accurate any of this stuff is, so I apologize. But I like the whole kind of back and forth between Doctor Doom and Reed with, what happens to rubber when it's instantly cooled or something like that. And I remember he says the same thing. what happens to super hot metal when it's cooled down or something. I can't remember exactly what he says, but I kind of like that little back and forth between the two of them.
Yeah.
And I do like that at the end, during that moment, they're all four of them. It's a team effort, essentially. You've got Johnny creating the supernova. You got Sue containing it with her force field. And then, even though the thing has one little job, which is to kick over a fire hydrant, he kicks over the fire hydrant. And Reed kind of directs the water using his body to Dr. Doom. So it is kind of a nice little team effort that they did there.
Yeah.
At the end of the film. So I appreciated that.
And that's what they're all about.
Right.
Even more than, the X-Men. The Fantastic Four combine their powers and their strengths to battle. I
would argue, especially because Sue and Reed get married and Johnny and Sue are siblings, that the X-Men, they're a team, but the Fantastic Four is a family.
Unit. Yeah. Oh, family. Yeah.
I mean, Ben is not technically, part of, like related to anyone, but they are, I think, more of a family than any of the other kind of teams, movie superhero teams that I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
I had one more note.
Okay.
Right at the end of the movie, it says the end, and then it kind of cuts back to the movie. And you see Dr. Doom being placed in a crate. And then I think, it's his assistant talking to somebody as they're packing up that crate. And the camera pulls out, and we see that he's on a very large ship amongst, hundreds of other crates.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And you see that the ship is being sent to Latveria, which is his home country. But my note on that is, I get the scene. I understood why they did it. It has to be kind of quick. But I feel like you wouldn't be packing up a crate while it's already in the middle of the ocean. That seems like you're a little late.
Good point. That's funny.
So I have to call him out on that.
Yeah.
But I understood the scene. I get it.
Yeah.
So
and lastly about Dr. Doom, the way that they ended him, I liked that. The little statue almost.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
And there's a hint in that little final scene too that he's not dead. He's basically a statue, but the guy has like an electronic clipboard, like it was almost like an iPad before iPads existed, and he's getting interference with it, and he's like, "What's with this thing?" And I think the assistant even like looks back at the crate, like, "Oh my gosh!" So it's like there's a hint, that he's not dead and he's going to be back. So then that was kind of, I feel like they have to do that sometimes, and certain, like, it seemed like a lot of movies all kept ending for a while there with not a cliffhanger, but like a tease that there will be a sequel. You know what I mean? And they still tend to do that from time to time.
Yeah.
The whole post-credit sequences and everything. So
I prefer that they don't do that, but sometimes it's cool. Like even the original Spider-Man had it with Harry Osborn and
I mean, to an extent, you kind of, with certain characters, you obviously, any studio hopes that these movies are going to be some sort of a franchise. The studio obviously wants to have a part 2 and a part 3 if they're going to do really well.
Right.
So they do kind of want to, there's a hope that it's going to happen, and so they put those types of things in there.
But it's gotten bad, man. I mean,
in the case of Spider-Man, it worked, and in the case of this movie, it worked. But yeah, it's
I'm saying like they've already greenlit Fantastic Four 2.
Have they really?
Yes.
Well, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's going to actually be good. But
we'll see.
Yeah, I guess so. I hope we see a trailer soon for that movie, because I really, I like the Fantastic Four, and I'd like to like the movie. So
yeah, I
hope it's good. Well, what would you rate this film?
You go first, because I'm still thinking.
I'm torn. I'm kind of, I'm torn on it, because I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
I didn't, it wasn't a chore to get through when I sat down and watched it last week.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, the things that we pointed out today, I feel like are they're hard to overlook.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to give this movie, and I hate to do this right after Star Wars because I feel like somebody's going to hate me for giving this a higher grade than what I gave Star Wars. Episode 1, for those who don't know what I'm talking about. But I think I'm going to give it I think I'm going to give it a C+.
And what did you give Star Wars?
A C, I think. I think I gave it right middle of the road, right. C.
C+.
So it technically has a higher grade than Star Wars, but maybe I'm also holding Star Wars to a higher standard.
And like we said in the Star Wars episode, one of the things that at least for me bumped up my rating, because I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5.
Yeah,
was the Duel of Fates.
Maul. Yeah.
But I do enjoy that movie too. But I'm torn as well. I'm leaning 3 to 3.5 stars out of 5. I'm gonna give 3.5.
Okay.
Because I think if you watch it with a little bit of the lightheartedness, it's a different experience. If you're watching it to watch a superhero movie like Iron Man or Thor or something,
you'll be disappointed.
Yeah, your rating's going to go down. But if you can watch it as a 2005 Marvel movie when they were still trying to understand what they wanted to do, truly the first Fantastic Four movie, and it had enough fun moments in it that I enjoyed it enough. Yeah, I'll give it 3.5 stars out of 5.
Nice. Well, we'd love to hear what you think about Fantastic Four. Let us know. You can comment on cinemaheroes.com, or you can tell us at Facebook, facebook.com/SM&SM podcast, or you can throw us a line on Twitter at cinemaheroes. As always, if you have any Amazon purchases, head to cinemaheroes.com, click on our Amazon banner. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but we get a tiny percentage of it, and that's always helpful for our podcasting costs and whatnot. And as always, very appreciated. I think that about wraps it up for this week's episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading.